Brad, we have a lot to get into, so I'll get right into it. Microsoft has been very busy on the AI front lately. We saw the announcement of the fund with BlackRock and Abu Dhabi's MGX. You and your partner G42 are also investing $1 billion in Kenya. And we've seen a data center in Malaysia as well for $2 billion, just to name a few of the things that you're doing. So what is different about AI and we just heard Sebastian talk about the ecosystem, the infrastructure and the energy needs that makes this technology different and how it connects with this mission of the next 3 billion and getting people online?
Well, the first thing I would say is it's great that we talk a lot about what AI can do for people, and I'm a huge believer in that. Everybody, I think, in the tech sector is. What I think we need to talk more about is the economic structure that is needed to bring AI to people. And it's really very similar to electricity, hence it was great to have that conversation. But we should start by reminding ourselves of two things. The first is, it's been more than 14 decades since electricity first powered lower Manhattan, and we still have 700 million people in the world, 43% of the people in Africa who do not have it. What went wrong? Well, in part, the roots of it lie in the economic structure of electricity. Think about a power plant and think about the grid. It is enormously expensive. It requires enormous capital investments. And you can contrast that with what it takes to, say, invent an appliance that you can plug into the wall. That's where it's possible for, say, a startup to get involved. And the world never figured out how to harness the capital markets or get governments to spend the money to build power plants for the people all around the world. Okay, fast forward, now it's AI. We have data centers that are bigger than power plants. They require electricity that will involve the construction of new power plants. And we need to build that out. And so the question becomes, how the heck are we going to do this? Let's make it our goal to bring AI to the world, not in a century and a half, but in the decade ahead. And that's a big part of what we're doing at the infrastructure level. But the thing that I would really say we should all think about is you are never going to come to a UN week and hear anybody from the United States government say, guess what, the Congress has just authorized $50 or $100 billion to bring data centers to Africa and Asia and Latin America. It will not happen. We will not bring AI to the world unless we harness the power of the private sector and capital markets, build new partnerships with governments, put in place the right kind of local regulatory structure, and that's in effect what we're trying to do with our own spending, with new financial innovations. I think that is a conversation we need to have.
So you also just announced, and we were just talking about this new nuclear project with 3 Mile Island and with Constellation. Is that a kind of model that can also be replicated in other parts of the world? I mean, obviously you're bringing back online a facility that has been offline, but are there examples in other parts of the world where you could sort of use that as a model?
In part. I mean, obviously, I think we need to be committed as an industry to a few principles when it comes to the power needed for data centers. Number one, we need to add electricity to the grid, not take electricity that's already being used by others. Number two, we need to really double down on, say, carbon-free sources of energy. Number three, we've got to do all of this in a way that doesn't raise electricity prices for people compared to what they're paying now. So how do you do that? Well, first, we've got to look at important investments in, say, renewables like solar and wind, while recognizing that that's not the same as base load. You need some way to keep the power running when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And so then you look at sources of base load. One is geothermal. You look at the partnership between G42 and Microsoft. Kenya is a very good country for geothermal energy. So that's a green data center that will be built running on geothermal. Then you've got to look at hydro and nuclear. And I think for nuclear, there's basically almost 3 layers to the equation. First is use what has been built in the past that can be turned on and run safely. That is what Microsoft committed to do last week with 3 Mile Island. You've got other countries where that also is important. Japan, for example. That's a real question that the Japanese public will need to have. The second is, call it next generation reactors, so-called 4th generation or small modular reactors. Right now, we look at that and we say that is a solution for the 2030s, which will be good. They'll be here before we know it. But is there a way, just as we're pooling capital to build out data centers, to pool capital that will bring together purchasers that will accelerate demand and accelerate construction for small modular reactors? And then finally, we need to keep focused on the great hope. The great hope is fusion. Someday, there will be fusion power for the world. I believe that. I have no idea when. I'd like to hope that everyone who says they can do it by the end of the decade will turn out to be right. We should invest in helping them, but we need to be comprehensive in our approach.
Got it. And you mentioned Microsoft's partnership with G42, and the two of you recently announced the centers in Abu Dhabi around responsible AI and sort of trying to find ways to use the technology for societal good. What does that look like, and how do the sort of geopolitical pressures around AI and who has control of what kind of technology and the chips that power all of this, how is that affecting where you see these partnerships like G42 and trying to navigate this space? Because we're here with many people from African countries that have also been caught between this U.S.-China tensions, whether it was Huawei in the past or others now with AI at the forefront.
I think the first thing we need to resolve is that we will do better than we have in the past in bringing this general purpose technology. That's what AI is. That's what economists would describe it as, like electricity. It'll serve every part of the economy. We need it, in my view, to bring it to the world as quickly as we safely and responsibly can, and put it to work so that it addresses real societal problems. And that's what we're doing with G42. That's what we're advancing in Kenya. That's what we're advancing in Abu Dhabi and other places. And a lot of that work is done by nonprofits. So you bring AI to a nonprofit and they can really move healthcare forward, or water conservation, or biodiversity, or other practical needs. So that's one thing. The second thing, though, is it then takes one back to how do we bring this infrastructure to the world? And I think it's worth just then appreciating, just as there is a technical architecture for AI, think of it as an infrastructure layer, there's a model layer, there's an applications layer. We are going to need to construct as a planet a financial architecture to make the investments to bring AI to these various places. It can be companies. It can be like the fund that we announced last week with MGX, which is from Abu Dhabi, and with BlackRock, broader pools of capital. I think we're going to need development banks to get into this business. We're going to need government support to start to put the capital in place. But then the third, the point that you're alluding to, is there is governance that's required. There's global governance. That's been the focus here in the UN. You certainly have the United States government focused on these issues. And already they're focused on export control limits on the exports of GPUs, the fundamental chips that drive all of this. And I think that what we're going to need is ultimately a global standard around safety, around security, around the other issues that sort of roll up into this new field of responsible AI. And I would tend to expect and probably predict that there's going to be a bit of an equation where the US will get comfortable. I would argue the US needs to get comfortable with these chips being exported, but the other side of the equation...
And exported to places like the Emirates.
Absolutely. like a Kenya, like a South Africa, like a Nigeria, like a UAE, fundamentally to much of the world. And the other side of the equation will be that these will be deployed in data centers with the right kind of safety and security and privacy standards and the like. And we're all trying to figure that out. You see bilateral initiatives, multilateral initiatives, corporate initiatives. The good news, in my view, is you're starting to see the emergence of a consensus that would put these together. That's what we'll need to ensure that this technology is exported and available widely.
Great. Well, Brad, we'll definitely be watching out for that and see how that develops. Brad Smith, thank you so much.
There you go. Thank you.